So, friends, it's international stuff. What we have here: Ukraine battling to stem Russian advance in north of Donetsk region. The challenge here is it's a grinding war, and every day that Russia is at war, it expends its armaments, it expends its munition, and it's having a difficult time replenishing. And in a sense, Ukraine probably kind of sacrifice a lamb for NATO and the West. What's come out is it's all because of what happened. Sweden, Finland, the size of NATO has grown. Central European nations are now absolutely wary about Russia. Not only that, while the ruble might be where it is, nobody really wants the ruble, right? Not you, not me, right? But the important part is technology degraded, the armed forces degraded, and what it's shown to NATO and the West is that this army that was made out to be whatever it was made out to be is just not what it is, and it's a lesson for India because we are flying on a limb and a prayer. Luckily, Chinese armaments are no better either, in my opinion, than the Russian ones. In fact, probably slightly marginally worse. It's about time we took a turn, folks, for the better. But Ukraine war will grind on. It's not finished. It's not a done deal yet for Russia. Where it want to stop, we don't know, folks. Cheers. So this war between Ukraine and Russia, right, has been a seismic event in global affairs, right? And it's created, as in an earthquake, it creates space, shifting sands. It's created space for India and back in Afghanistan because the other three people who were the main players, China, Russia, and Pakistan, in trouble. Pakistan bankrupt, China's having to worry about its hemisphere, the South China Sea as the United States repivots, and Russia in war. Russia, China, Pak in new regional structure, India calibrates stand. India, because of whatever its patience, has come out a winner. Though I always thought that India should have been there earlier. The stakes in Kabul, he says, reestablishing diplomatic presence is a signal that Delhi wants to retrieve lost leverage, but it does not mean full-blown romance. He says it is bound to be laced with challenges, but with a well-planned and long-term strategy, it has the potency of securing many of India's strategic interests. Second, while there is an ongoing debate about the need for engagement and disengagement, there seems to be some convergence in the policy and strategic circles that engagement, not complete detachment, could be the key to securing India's huge strategic interests in Afghanistan. This needs to be done with the Taliban regime is still isolated internationally and therefore amenable to India's presence, which we can see, right? The divisions within the Taliban do provide the space to win over the moderates and dilute the agenda of the hardliners. The changing geopolitical and regional alignments need to be utilized deftly by India. Then he says, Talib regime should be made to address global concerns. Avinash Mohani, he wrote this long time ago, saving Afghan lives and helping the country stand on its feet without external intervention should be the guiding factor in formulating a response. An external factor, and Akuzunda has to say the same thing. Taliban leaders ask the world to stop interfering in Afghanistan, and the people who would continue to interfere in Afghanistan essentially is Pakistan. Taliban makes it loud and clear China is our top ally, and this top ally, can you imagine, this is what it came out with: children, change. China backs Taliban government to give 31 million aid, says interim cabinet. Russia was conspicuously absent at meeting hosted by Pakistan's foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, who's gone, done and dusted. Uyghurs staying in Afghanistan tense. Taliban tells China that ETM militants have left Afghanistan. China trying to take over Bagram base, use Pak against India. China takeover of Bagram, fake news, which it was. And this, folks, is really, really the important fact, right? The important fact is that China has turned out to be just a person who gives small, petty change. Has not really come out and to help Afghanistan. And there's going to be a conflict eventually between mercantilism and pure theft that the China does versus this ideology of Islam. Eventually, it has to blow back in the face of Xi and Wang Yi. So when we look at Russia and Putin's war, essentially, the problem is that he views his soldiers as just another massive horde of serfs that can be sacrificed. Major losses don't deter him. Not yet anyway. In order to be deterred, he needs to have some empathy for his own people. He has none. But however, like Xi, an overconfident bully is vulnerable. Just remember that, right? And this is what we thought about the future of China's engagement in Afghanistan, written by Manoj Keval Ramani. He says, as evident from this, at one level, the US withdrawal amplifies Beijing's challenges associated with terrorism. This is not only with regard to the threat, however limited, of infiltration into Xinjiang, but also in the context of inspiration for a revitalization of transnational terror outfits. This could impact China's BRI. And at another level, it signals that Biden administration's pivoting its strategic focus towards the Indo-Pacific, with Afghanistan dominating global headlines. US President Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris' trip to Southeast Asia received little coverage, which it should have, right? Unfortunately, the reality is the big Chinese investment in Afghanistan's natural resources over the past 2 decades have not yet yielded any significant gains. It is unlikely that amid potentially greater instability in the near future, the Chinese leadership will suddenly begin viewing the country from an opportunity prism, right? And you see this contradiction which I was talking about. Qaeda skips mention of Xinjiang and Chechnya, will keep communication open with new leaders of Taliban government, said China. Power must be held by patriots, not traitors, said Xi. Jaishankar may discuss LSE with China's Wang in Bali. Jaishankar sir, it's not time about discussion, it's time about throwing them out. Where's your patience, man? China, why is this patience there, right? China asked Pakistan to get to the bottom of Karachi blast. This is the play up of the contradiction. Sending signals to China, PM wishes Dalai Lama on his 87th birthday. But do remember this, right? Chinese army is full of wimps, sissies and little emperors. We are not. That is what China thinks, right? And it says Chinese superiority military, so is a myth. China often worries about the key of battle-hardened army soldiers in a tough fight. And this may happen to us in Agniveer, so we have to be very clear. Close to 70% of the Chinese military force is comprised, and remember this, of single children with no siblings. As such, they have been brought up as emperors. And this is what you got to remember, it's not a fighting force, folks. And that's when we make when we go out and try and get our land back, we must remember that. So in a sense, right, this is what it is, right? Afghanistan unfortunately got tied with Pakistan and a basket case is Af-Pak basket case. ISI's Taliban will run a country in dire economic straits. Neither is nor its backers have resources. Pakistan, for all its influence over Taliban, can hardly financially prop up the new Kabul government given its own dire economic situation and dependence on IMF funding. There's big hope for Taliban that then is China, when the group leaders indicating their willingness to join Beijing's BRI and touting the future development of Afghanistan's vast mineral resources, including lithium. But neither is China likely to rush into an unstable Afghanistan, nor will commercial exploitation of minerals, which in lithium's case can take up to 16 years, happen in the short term. This is the reality. Taliban reject Pakistan minister's claim of trade in Pakistani rupees. In spotlight over role in Taliban when Pakistan tries to shift focus to Kashmir. Pakistan hand Haqqanis in, so is Talib who bought the Buddha down. Women lead Kabul protests against Taliban, slam Pakistan interference. Afghans protest meddling by Pakistan, called Taliban its puppets. Blame Pakistan for airstrikes. Pakistan Taliban bomber blows himself up in Balochistan. 4 security personnel killed. Pakistan 3 killed, 20 injured in Talib suicide attack. Pakistan in charge of Taliban as colonial power. So not all is well in this front, whether it's Pakistan, China or Afghanistan. Cheers. So Beijing, we had big plans to be part of the great game, but nobody really has been successful at this great game, whether it be the British, the Americans, the Russians, right? Beijing's great game. Having sufficient influence over Afghanistan is crucial for BRI as it links with Pakistan to the east and south, Iran to the west, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan to the north, and Tajikistan and China to the northeast. Connectivity to a vast area of Asia has always been part of Chinese global ambitions. But China has realized it is extremely difficult for an outside power to grow roots in Afghanistan and command influence for long. In the coming days, Beijing will face intense pressure for aid from Kabul, which currently it is reluctant to provide, continues to be so. India stepped in there and is stepped as it did in Sri Lanka. Pakistan and Russia, under severe economic stress themselves, are in no position to help Kabul. This leaves Iran, Turkey and Qatar, which will play a key role in aid. A serious competition for influence building is expected to emerge among these countries. Pakistan, despite its latest fly-by-night efforts, may find itself in a difficult position to retain influence over the new Taliban government, which expects it to play the role of messenger for China. And it's not happening, folks. China in a topsy-turvy, down the hill kind of situation. Our analysts need to look at this as reality. So Pakistan as a messenger for China, it just ain't going to work. Why is that? As Raja Mohan writes, Pakistan's Kabul syndrome. Rawalpindi's victory in Afghanistan might make it a bigger nuisance for India and the region, but it's unlikely to reverse the steady decline of Pakistan's comprehensive national power over decades. It says quite tempting to believe today that spoils of Afghan war belong to the presumed victor Pakistan, but it is also possible to argue that the opposite is true. The Pakistan is not part of the Afghan spoils. The strategy of using violent religious extremism to control Afghanistan over the last 5 decades has also deeply affected Pakistan's polity that is now under the shadow of the Taliban's pre-modern ideology. If Pakistan's record of interventions is not impressive, the difficulty of turning Afghanistan into a coherent entity has challenged all the regimes in Kabul since the monarchy was deposed in 1973.
that Pakistan can perform this miracle with the support of China is the current conventional wisdom. But the messiness of the real world will intervene sooner than later and remind us that political miracles are rare. Meanwhile, the grand political obsession with destabilizing its neighbors has made Pakistan's economy fall well behind that of Bangladesh. India's GDP is 10 times larger than that of Pakistan today. And that is important. Quetta suicide bomber arrived from Pakistan. China backed India on keeping Pak out of BRICS Plus event if they were forced to, because they're also flying on a wing and a pair. China lends Pakistan 2.3 billion. France delays loan paid back of 107 million. France signs deal with Pakistan to suspend its loan. A reckoning for Pakistan. The Taliban's protector cheers the group Afghanistan takeover. But Mr. Khan may rue what he wished for. Jihadists want to control Pakistan and its nuclear weapons, which would instantly become a dangerous Islamist caliphate. Mr. Khan's glib anti-Americanism may be an effort to appease Pakistan's extremists, but he should watch that they don't come for him first. Thank God he's gone. Up to Pak to stop terror in Afghanistan, India tells Russia. Afghanistan security on table as key US Russian officials arrive in Delhi. And here the real friend for India, folks, just remember, is the United States and not Russia. Our interests and Russia's interests are absolutely at loggerheads in Afghanistan. 3 cheers.
So the other grouping that we are part of, besides BRICS, the SCO, we're going to remember this, right? We got to get over this North-South BS. Because by no imagination, no stretch of imagination is China the South. You got to remember, we were trying to take leadership of the South right after independence under Nehru. That's part of the reason that China got at us in the 1962, because Mao wanted that mantle for himself. So you got to get rid of this rosy tinted eye that China is the South, great South, leader of the great South. It's not. It's a robber baron. It's an imperialist, just like Russia. So he says, don't, and rightly Raja Mohan writes, don't bank on Shanghai Group. While India must contribute to collective effort at this week's SCO summit to hold Taliban and Pakistan to their promises, it will be hard to bet on success. It can't. Too many contradictions. India and Russia discussed terror from Afghanistan, not that the bloody Russians help at all. And SCO PM said to focus on terror in Imran's presence. Well, he did, but Imran's gone. Worried India keeps it close. But this is what's happening. SCO was, if you remember, formed essentially by Russia to protect its Central Asian nation, right? And it got China involved and this disaster set in, right? Worried India keeps a close watch as violent protests grip part of Uzbekistan. India develops Aini airport in Tajikistan in boost to ties. There has been an increased focus to bolster overland connectivity. India's close partners from Arab world likely to join Shanghai Cooperation as dialogue partner. I guess whenever you involve Iran and Qatar, you've got to get Saudi Arabia and UAE, who've turned out to be one of our staunchest allies at this point of time, even helping us sail through this Nupur controversy and all the stuff that's happening against the minorities in there. Cheers. So Qatar is basically the conflict between Qatar and Kuwait on one side, Muslim Brotherhood support, and the monarchies of the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates on the other side, and India caught in between, has probably picked the right side, right? You see, Qatar emerges as key player in Afghanistan, and obviously is putting its foot in everywhere. But for India, this is the most important relationship to counter what's happening in India. UAE president comes all the way to airport, meets PM, right? PM gifts Japan, PM pottery, bonjour. Okay, this is another one. Modi's UAE visit reaffirms close strategic ties, and this is the important one. Closing the Gulf, written by Navdeep Suri. He says UAE is India's closest partner in Arab world, and resilience in bilateral ties will withstand recent convulsions, but it will take a sustained public diplomacy effort to undo the damage, and he's totally right. But this is a relationship that has moved well beyond the confines of diplomatic protocols. The warmth and personal chemistry between the Prime Minister and Sheikh Mohammed are genuine and palpable. The two leaders also issued an ambitious forward-looking joint vision statement titled Advancing India and UAE Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, New Frontiers, New Milestones. On the regional front, the rapid normalization of ties between UAE and Israel following the Abraham Accords of 2020 has also opened new avenues of trilateral and multilateral cooperation. Some Israeli tech companies are already establishing base in Dubai and seeking to marry niche technologies with Emirate capital and Indian scale. By the comments on Prophet Muhammad by Nupur Sharma and Naveen Kumar Jindal, these comments reveal an utter ignorance of the crucial support that countries like the UAE have given to India in the Islamic world. This is what I was saying, right? The UAE today is India's closest partner in the Arab world, and fortunately there is enough resilience in bilateral ties to withstand the recent convulsions. But India's image has been dented in the hearts and minds of the average Emiratis and left many Indians living in the Gulf appalled at the wanton injury caused to their interests. And this, folks, is the important one. And just like the right-wing goons are not taking on scholars in the United States against them, against who talk the truth about Hinduism, Vedas, and the old Indian history, the same thing like this. We cannot let our reputation be damaged. Three cheers and Jai Hind.